I'm sitting with Dr. Jennifer Abod. She is an award-winning documentarian in both video and audio, and she was a radio broadcaster for 19 years. She was also the singer in the New Haven, Connecticut women's rock band from 1970 to 1976. She also has a PhD in intercultural media education and women's studies, which is now more popular, but at the time she created that degree. And she's also the producer of The Passionate Pursuits of Angela Bowen. So she's pretty much a rock star. So tell me, why did you get interested in filmmaking?
I'm going to talk about time before you were born, which was 1969. I was 24 years old, and the women's movement had begun to blossom, and with that became the urge to talk about the inequalities of women. There was so much to do, and we weren't on radio, right? We weren't doing all kinds of things. Women earn, what, 70%, 70 cents on the dollar for a man, something like that. I mean, I don't know the statistics. So it was a revolution, right? I mean, it took the streets. That's what a revolution is. You take the streets, and the rock band grew out of a group of women who wanted to change rock music, which was really sexist, really, really sexist. And even women like Janis Joplin, who were singing "Take a Little Piece of My Heart," they were very, they were not positive. And you see a lot of the women out there today, you know, I mean, you know, rah, rah, you know, out there, blah, blah, blah.
In lingerie.
And, yeah, I mean, you know, everywhere. But at that time, it was "Take a Little Piece of My Heart." You want to abuse me, you know, my man uses me, that kind of stuff. And we had to change the lyrics of the songs. So a group of people came together. They had played music in high school, French horn, saxophone, drums, guitar, piano, flute, and me, who had never sung professionally at all. And we got together and we formed a band because every boy who was 14 years old was able to kind of get into a rock band and started in their damn garage, right? So why couldn't we do that, right? Even though we were 24. We got started a little late. Anyhow, that's how the band started. And the band was invited to play in Washington, D.C. At the very first big march on Washington. And we were on a big platform, the whole
Yes, so that is the music that I saw.
Looking at the White House. I was singing and looking at the White House.
Cool.
It was, and seeing all of these women with signs all over the place. Cool. It was kind of amazing. Yeah.
So maybe we can show a little bit of that and play the music, because I thought it was really cool.
Why not?
So what made you take a stance, and because you say you have to take a stance and you're very bold about it. Why? Why'd you do that instead of just going with the flow? And
well, it was in my own interest. I mean, why would I participate in anything that would make me a second-class citizen? Couldn't get equal rights, you know. Couldn't if I had gotten married, I couldn't ordinarily own a home. And the laws were incredible, right? You know, you had to hide about abortion. You couldn't. It was. You know, all you could do is be a secretary. I mean, it was just. I mean, it would have been insane for me not to have. It would have been self-defeating not to become a feminist. There was no alternative. It was either that or be like, you know, my mother or my aunt. I was not, you know, fortunate enough to be from families where women were doing things other than being housewives and raising children. And they were really smart women.
And your film, The Passionate Pursuits of Angela, is related to this movement, but it's also something deeper for you. Can you talk a little bit more about the film, what it's about, and why you chose to do this?
Angela is a magnificently beautiful black woman who grew up very poor in Roxbury, Massachusetts. I was a white woman who grew up in middle-class suburbia in Chicago. Always had enough food on the table. My mother did not have to work. And Angela Bowen came from a very different life, a life that I certainly wouldn't know. It was an era of Jim Crow, right, where, you know, segregation was in place. Little Black Sambo, was taught in schools. I think. Are you too young to know what Little Black?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Okay, Little Black Sambo was one of the zillions of characterizations of black people, where they had these really big lips and really big eyes, and they were from Africa, and it was just really, really bad characterization of black people.
And was this taught?
Little Black Sambo was taught in kindergarten.
As like a children's book?
Yes.
Okay.
It was taught in children as a children's book, and that's the kind of environment that Angela grew up in.
Right.
Okay, we're talking about Jim Crow. So, as a feminist, as a white woman, I learned about racism, not just anti-Semitism. Right?
Right.
So when I told stories, which I did because I was a documentarian, I was radio, and I did music and all that kind of stuff like that, and I met a woman named Audre Lorde, who was basically the founding mother of black feminism.
Okay.
And what she said to me, and she said to all white women, is that you will be in places that I will never be. Okay? You will be in places that I will never be. So if I'm in places that she will never be, and I'm the only voice that's going to be speaking up for issues of race, I got to do something about it, right?
Right.
Okay. I happened to be in love with Angela Bowen. Yeah. I met her in 1979 when she was part of a very different kind of culture than she was a dancer, and she had been teaching dance for 19 years in inner city New Haven, Connecticut. And I met her and I fell in love with her. And 20 years after we had been together, we've been together 35 years, I asked her if she would let me do a documentary about her life, because I had already done 2 documentaries, one about Audre Lorde, who is now considered the mother of black feminism, and I needed to do a documentary about Angela Bowen, because the issues of what makes someone, what allows someone to face the challenges of racism, sexism, classism, and fall in love with dance, know that she had something to offer the world, decide that she was going to face the challenges that came, and be her authentic self for her entire life. Well, that's a story. It's a story for me as well.
Yeah, she was facing a lot of challenges at this time, and it seems like she was positive and she surpassed that. She still had the motivation and
She didn't surpass it. You don't ever surpass it, because it leaves a mark. But you face it, and how you deal with it, right? How you approach the challenge, what your decisions are, based on your family, based on your mission, based on your own passions. That's the story, and that is why I did this, because she all through her life faced the challenges in such bold ways that I could never imagine myself doing. I also wanted to learn more about who she was.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm her partner. So that means...
You didn't know everything you had to know?
No, of course not. How do you know someone? I mean, I met her when she was 42 years old. So she already had lifetimes before.
Yeah.
So the only way that I could really get to know her influence and the challenges that she had were to interview the people who knew her in her prior life. So I interviewed her husband, I interviewed her children, I interviewed her former dance mentor.
You just said something, was she was previously married?
Oh, yes.
I didn't know this. Is it okay?
Oh, yes. Yes, a whole life, a whole another life.
And you knew that prior to going on to these interviews, or was that something that you learned? Okay.
No, remember, I had been with Angela for 20 years.
Okay.
By the time I asked her if she'd be willing to do this documentary about her life, and the fact that she trusted me, with her stories, meant a lot. And she had already seen the documentaries that I had done, and it was enough for her. She was convinced that I could do it. And then, of course, it's been a journey for me. So you don't just, when you do a documentary, you're not just doing a documentary about something or someone or some issue. You're learning also about yourself in relationship to the things that you're doing it about. So of course I've stretched and grown enormously in ways that I never could have imagined.
So what have you learned about her? How has that contributed or been a meaningful experience for both of you?
The journey of the film and making the film for the two of us has been, it's just been enormous. because I've had revelations about some of the interviews. I didn't quite understand the impact. What does it mean that she had to overcome this challenge and she overcame it in this particular way? How did she strategize to survive disappointments and the challenges? How did she do that, and where did she get the strength? Where did she get the strength to do that? What was the beginning point? For me, I had once those things kept coming up, I kept having to go back to the stories, those earlier stories that I didn't know.
And did you find an answer to that?
I did. They're in the film.
It's in the film. Good. We'll have to watch it to see that. Well, I think it's beautiful that you're doing this, and it's such a unique story. And now, so I don't know if people know this, but you're actually taking care of her now.
Yes.
And has Alzheimer's.
Yeah, so what's interesting is that the film is taking me a long time because of financing. I mean, it's just very difficult to get financing for films. But so it turns out that Angela has Alzheimer's, and so that the film has taken on even more meaning because she is able to see
her
past,
that's beautiful,
and her life and her work out there in film, and that's been important, to her, and it's been important to me that she is amazed by the film and that she's pleased with it. What can I say?
That's really special. And my last question to you is, I don't know if I want to ask, so what do you want for this film?
What I want for the film is for it to reach across generations. This is a film that's very important to young people who are making transitions in life. It's important for people who are in midlife and making transitions because, Angela didn't go back to school to get her, to finish her bachelor's degree until her 50s. She got her PhD in her 50s. So this is a film about transitions, about people changing their lives. One of the first things that she says in the film is, you don't have to just do one thing. So it's an inspirational film. There are very few films about people like Angela out there in the world, the true stories of their lives. So it was important for me to make a film that could reveal her passions, her challenges, her strategies, and her influences in her life.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I look forward to watching the film.
We'll be there.
Yes.
Thank you. Please contribute as much as you possibly can, and together we can complete her candid and compelling story for future generations. You will not be disappointed.